I think it was Einstein that said, the more I see the universe, the more I see myself. And the more I look at myself, the more I realize I could use a comb. You see, Einstein was a man who could contemplate the general theory of relativity in his mind, but apparently found combing his hair too complex. It's that kind of idiot savant, that kind of lack of detail in the unimportant things, but laser focused on the important things. That to me is a indicator of what Brad Stine Has Issues show podcast is all about. Sure, it's got its silliness. Sure, it's got its glitches. Sure, whether we like it or not, somewhere on this podcast, Wyatt's going to screw up. But when you walk away, you'll have more insight, more depth, more knowledge, more confidence to walk amongst the less informed, the less enlightened, the less inspired, the unteachables, in other words, and know that you have an understanding of how the world works that just is rarely given to mortal man. But you got it because you watched me. That's why Northern Ireland shows up. Australia, Colorado, and Canada. They show up because they realize that this is the only place left to dig deep and leave a better man than you started, even if you started as a woman. That's odd, isn't it? Yeah? Let's take that apart. Let's unpack it. But most importantly, my friends, it's me, God's comic Brad Stine, and this is, in fact, Brad Stine Has Issues. You know how I know? Listen here. You know how I know? Listen here. Are we not going to do the...
No, it's over. It just ended.
Oh, I didn't hear it. See, there was a time when my song, that was the theme song to my show, would appear in my earphones, and thus I knew they played. Now, why? Let's be honest. Why should I have access to hearing the theme song and thus understanding that it played? That would, again, be too obvious, too easy, too professional, and most importantly, and ironically, I had just stated it's a guarantee that you're going to drop the ball somewhere. And my goodness, you dropped the ball before the ball even got in the court. Well done, son.
Well,
Bravo.
I will say that our audience heard it, and they're really all I care about, since they are the ones that allow this to continue to exist.
Well, listen, can you hear
We
me?
can replace you with any monkey we find in the zoo.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Them, though.
So you
That'd be
do,
a lot of monkeys.
you can hear me though, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I can't hear you or me, so I'm just taking off my headphones.
Why do you even have those on? When have they ever worked for us?
I don't know. Maybe
exactly, that's your fault.
I'm going to leave them on. All right, so listen, it's important, as you know, to always start the podcast by saying hi to folks who showed up because, let's face it, they have boring lives. And you know who's number one today, and I don't know how to even bring this up, son. I don't normally do it. But as you know, Clara Beatty.
It's Nick Kress. It's always been Nick Kress. It always will be Nick
Why,
Kress.
when I say it's Clara Beatty, where does she show up on yours?
Let me go check.
Never mind. Hey, Brad, Wyatt, everyone. Guess what? James Voight set an alarm, found the broadcast. You know why? Because Facebook, the last thing they want to do is let people know I'm here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Sean Siriak, hey, Brad and White, from the frozen north of Maine. Well, hey, it's not my fault you moved there. You know, you've got a car. You can always leave.
Clara Beatty is 14th.
Oh, my goodness. Letitia Clemenson, hello. Rebecca Daly Dwyer, she's there. Hello, Wyatt. Always talks to you, never talks to me. Gerald Muha, he's got half an icon. Is that normal?
He only paid half price.
Oh, nice. Amelia Miyazawa Neculace, watching from Japan. Love your style, God bless. Amelia is watching from Japan. Wyatt, what is it about this podcast that has so few Japanese viewers? And don't say it's because our sushi is 2 days old.
And from a gas station.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say probably time zone. What is 7 p.m. Eastern, Western, Northern time?
I'm curious why you think I would know, son.
Well, maybe our audience knows. Audience, what time is it span right now?
Dusty Wilhelm, the issues have begun. You better believe it. Cassandra Crawford, what are you talking about? See how Cassandra is? She's befuddled. And Wyatt, what is a one-word description of Brad Stine Has Issues?
Befuddled.
Yeah. Howdy, Steininians. Oh, it's Karen Boyd. She's gotten crazy. Howdy, Steininians. That's the kind of comment you would get from somebody deeply embedded on Xanax pill number 5.
I forget, what's Xanax again? Isn't that like sleeping medication? Or
It's a medication that, keeps you kind of from having your ADHD or
I
or
should
maybe
know that so badly, and I don't, and I feel sad for it.
Carrie.
I didn't take.
You know what Carrie Tudor said? You know Carrie, right? She's a big fan.
Yeah.
She said, we heard it and we can hear you.
Yeah.
Bevan McManaman, it's such a crazy name to say. I love her, but my gosh. Bebhinn, Bevan. So clearly, son, why would I think BH pronounced V?
Well, I mean, there are plenty of letters combinations that say ridiculous things, like XE is a Z sound.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, I don't know.
That doesn't. I mean, hey, at least those letters bother to show up in the pronunciation. How about the P in pterodactyl? Where's that?
Oh.
What's that one doing? Is it late to work or something?
Okay. I see where you're going with that. Hey, listen, we got a new guy, Tim Hainline. He says, hey, bro, it's Tim Hainline from Orange County, El Medina High. Ever heard of Orange County, son?
Maybe, in another life.
Yeah,
Yes.
and why would that be significant to you, my son?
Because I was born there.
You were indeed. Tim
Back
Hainline,
in my day, I was
actually,
born
I
there.
went to school with this young man. I say young man because he's as old as me, and so since it's my podcast, I can just make crap up. We're young. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it Monday already? Carrie Hathaway. Nick Kress has given me his...
I thought it was you asking me if it was Monday.
I know.
No, it's Tuesday.
Nick Kress, give me some laughy emojis. Cassandra Crawford, hi there. David Green, same laughy emojis as Nick Kress.
Okay, seriously. So I know a picture is worth 1,000 words
Yeah.
and all, but an emoji's probably worth like half.
Oh.
It's like hieroglyphics, only somehow lazier.
Wyatt, Bridget Walliver, who's never been here, good evening. Let's see.
I mean, I just don't understand emojis. Like, why do we perpetuate their existence? Why? Are words too hard now? Are words too hard?
Clearly.
Why?
Emojis are like drawing little faces that you used to do when you doodled.
Yeah, I get that.
In
It
kid.
took us. We spent like how many years transitioning from pictures on a wall to written text, and it took us how many months to regress back? Like, really?
So you're saying technology, as advanced as it is, in some odd, interesting way, has resorted in its progress by returning us to hieroglyphics.
Yeah, basically.
about that?
It's ridiculous.
Aaron McKinney's here from Texas, and Carrie Hathaway said, great idea, set an alarm. So that's what you guys are going to have to do. And guess what? Karen said hi to the Japanese watcher, which I think is beautiful. James Lyons, hi from Water Valley, Mississippi. Let's see. Oh, Amelia Miyazawa Neculus. I'm Romanian. Nice. Well, now we've got a Romanian living in Japan watching a show in Nashville,
Who
Tennessee.
still doesn't know what the time zones are like.
I know.
Like, come on, how can you live there and not know what it's like here?
Gerald Muja said morning over here. Is he in Japan, or did he just wake up from a drunken stupor and doesn't know what time it is?
Well, I mean, if you did, and it's still 7 there, it wouldn't be morning now, would it?
That's a good point. Let's see. Larry Gilbert looking good. He pops in just quick enough to see if his insights have helped us. No, I don't hear anything in here. Nothing is what we need audio technical help immediately. Earl Shank. Hi, from Glen Falls, New York. He always mentions it. I'd usually be in choir, but I've got a cold, so I'm watching now instead of on the flip side. Well done. I'm glad you're here, my friend. Aaron Von Pauker. Love from Michigan. Douglas Kroll, I love you, really, but, oh yes, I'm a Christian too. Love your stand-up better, don't hate me. It seems to me you got a lot more across, I think. Love you, bye. Well done. Peter Laird, hello from Western New York. I want to get out to New York, Wyatt, upstate, and do a tour. You want to go with me?
Maybe, yeah.
Remember when we went there before?
Oh, you know what? I just remembered I have a thing that day.
Well, this is upstate. This isn't Manhattan. Lots of love from Madison Heights, Michigan. That's Aaron Von Pauker. Hank Williams is here. He said it's lazy people. Johanna Barber, go Brooklyn Dodgers. She sees my Brooklyn Dodgers. Cavemen were smarter than some of our millennials. You got that, David Butts. Tim Hainline. Oh, okay. We just already said him. Aaron Van Pauker. I think that's everybody. Well, listen, it's important, White, that we cut to the chase. We said hi to some of our folks. We said hello to them. I'm curious, son.
Mm-hmm.
Life in America, as you know, has gotten odd and unusual.
And
you talked about technology. You talked about how technology, in some odd ways, have propelled us forward into amazing new ways of, longer lifespans now. We have a lot more things we can access. We can pick up a phone and dial Japan. They can watch us instantaneously. But I think it's got some downside, and I do believe that soon and very soon we're going to see even less people involved in the retail business, because have you noticed that McDonald's, which they demanded pay them $15 an hour, now is virtually nothing but online. You walk in and you have to do your own punch thing. You do all the work for these people. Mm-hmm. Lowe's would never stoop to this. Lowe's would never give up in his employees. Lowe's would never stop using the human experience, the one-on-one that people with a wrench need to go to somebody, push those buttons, and have them there to...
Yeah. Yep. We would never do... what I want again?
Lowe's would not sell out. They're not going to just go to the automatic.
Yeah, we totally wouldn't do that. Okay, I gotta come clean. So, you didn't hear this from me, but apparently they're trashing the manual checkout lanes, and guess what they were replacing them with?
What?
Self-checkout.
Lowe's has sold out.
They sold out? They sold out.
They're going to the robots.
They're going to the machines.
The robots are taking over the... Son, what are you going to do? What happens when they bring in some robot wrench expert? You're out. And then you're stuck with me. I would do everything I could to lobby for them to keep the employees on that have flesh.
You're right. We shall throw them off the roof with our finest trebuchets.
Listen, I got to tell you something.
Get it? Because it's lobbying.
Yeah.
Haha. Funniest joke I've done this podcast.
Right.
Anyway, so you had something funny to say? I sure don't.
Listen to me. I want to know where do you begin as a human to evaluate progress, and where do you begin to realize that we are using, and it's laziness, by the way. It's laziness. I mean, robots, scrolling, you know, having all the stuff that we have. But it's based on tapping into having you have less to think about, having you have less as a human to engage in, having have less as a human to have relationships, having have less as you as a human to participate in the experience, tactily seeing the person, smelling the person, having to look at them square in the face. It's this almost as though humans have decided that they're going to make themselves obsolete. And yet, if we go obsolete, what's going to happen to those checkout counters, Wyatt? Nobody will be there to turn them off or unplug them. But what's going to happen when the are gone? Are the machines going to grow legs like, Pickle Rick and just start taking off on their own?
No, what? No. They're not going to do that because any machine, no matter how advanced, has to be programmed. No programmer, no program. No program, no thing.
So you're saying that technology, which thinks it's superior, would just run down into nothingness without us useless humans that used to need to push in the little button. How much is that? Check, check, check. How much is that? Check, check, check. How are you, Mrs. Phillips? Hey, speaking of Phillips, have you looked at our wrenches? Ha ha ha. I'll bet you hear that all the time. You know, Lowe's jokes. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to joke with them with that if it's the automatic checkout. Who are they going to have to do some dry, silly dad jokes, nincompoopery that you constantly give them every time they come to your aisle?
Speaking of which, I thought of a new one during the podcast.
Let's hear it.
All right. What is, in a band, which member is the most unlucky at love?
I give up. Which band member is most unlucky at Lowe's?
The vocalist, because they're always single.
They're always...
Single.
Single.
Yes.
Single?
Yes, single.
I know, but it's not really... Doesn't really pay off, son.
What do you mean? What part of that doesn't pay off?
Single has nothing to do with Lowe's.
I said most unlucky at love.
Oh, at love.
Oh, my goodness.
Okay.
The wrench is out of your head, man.
Okay, I thought you said who's most unlucky at Lowe's, so I thought it was going to be a...
Who could come up with a good joke about that? There's only so many Lowe's jokes to go around.
Yeah. Well, listen, here's what I'm thinking about tonight, folks, as we come together as a group, as a people. Anybody else interesting pop up, or are they just talking to themselves like they normally do and leave me hanging?
James Vogt asked about AI writing software, which actually it can do. I think it's Google or something, or someone who basically have invented this, like, the software.
Yeah.
Where you ask it to do a task, and it actually writes the code to do that task.
Okay.
Which is, just one checkmark off of Apocalypse Bingo, which is always great. Let's just say there are really big issues with the self-replicating robots.
Yes. Hey, James Monroe Smith, I enjoyed you Saturday night in Wharton. White Eyes in Wharton, Texas, Saturday night, performing for a group of folks in Wharton, Texas, right outside of Houston, about an hour and 15 minutes. They love me, son.
Well, Parnafe Marie Roushi said...
She's here?
...that they heard love with my joke, which I'm just going to let you know it now. Parna, it was never him mishearing me. It was him being so devoted to the Lowe's bit that he just couldn't hear any other word. He has a sickness. He has a sickness for the Lowe's jokes. He has to hear them.
Do you know it's 10 a.m. in Japan?
So they do know what time it is. Why are we doing this podcast at 10 a.m.?
Listen.
Shouldn't this be at night?
10 a.m. We're at nighttime. They're there.
Well, okay, yeah, but it's Monday, 10 a.m. on a Monday. No, the Japanese people are at work right now. They're not going to be listening to Brad and Wyatt have issues with computers.
You'd think, but
The
yet there's
podcast?
But keep in mind, the person that isn't at work in Japan is
Prime Minister,
from.
Kentucky.
No, they said they were from
Romania.
Romania.
The land of the Romans.
Yeah. Well, listen. I have been telling you guys for quite some time now that I was been trying to navigate what my role is on Earth. That's quite a big deal, right? I mean, and here's the thing: you all have your own role on Earth. Have you ever thought about that? I mean, Shakespeare said all the world's a stage. Until he realized the unions got involved, and then it's like he had to pay him extra and overtime to tear it down after he left. But we kind of come into this earth. Nobody asks. Nobody asks. You're born. You don't know how it worked. You don't know why you were the one that showed up. And we don't really know when the sperm and the egg meet and it's you. What would have happened if it was the sperm next to you? We don't know. We don't know if it'd still be you, kind of, and they're all kind of... I don't know how it works. I don't know if each cell has its own DNA within the sperm, or if when they come together it creates... because clearly I'm not a biologist, though I do know what a woman is. So that's confusing. Somebody's wrong. One of these experts is not like the other. But once you exist, you bring us some special little thread of fabric, of the fabric of the world. You're a little thread that is participating in that some way or the other. Maybe in a good way, maybe in a positive way, maybe in a bad way. You know, obviously there are people that have terrible reputations and did horrible things. And their name still lives, even though they're long gone. And there are people that did wonderful things. But, you know, most of the people that did evil things or good things that have ever existed on this earth, you've never heard of, or have I. They came and went. They're gone. They were in some little village somewhere in Tuscany, and they're gone. They were somewhere in Greece. They were somewhere in Maine. And they've come and gone. And in that little community, they made an impact, and people loved them or didn't. And then they left, and nobody knows. And you go visit their cemeteries, and you look at them, and you go, who was this guy? He died in 1845. And the truth is, nobody remembers him. But he was there. I once visited, Wyatt, a cemetery in Connecticut. I was performing comedy, and I just had downtime. And it was gray and rainy, and drizzly, I guess.
You were performing comedy at a cemetery? Was it like for a funeral?
No. Hey, Wyatt, I killed. Okay. Anyways.
You knocked him dead, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay, you buried the lead. Listen, what happened was this. I was there to perform that evening. I had the daytime, so I went and I walked into the cemetery because...
Oh, you were working the graveyard shift. Got it.
No. I worked the evening, and I was there during the day to walk around because I wanted something to do. I was in Connecticut.
So let me get this straight here. Are you trying to tell me that you went to Connecticut, and the only thing that you could think to do to pass the time was visit a cemetery?
I like cemeteries.
What do you think Connecticut is? Iowa?
Connecticut is a New England state. It's an old state. So I wanted to go into the cemetery, and I did. And every time, by the way, folks, every time I'm driving somewhere, every time I go, and I see a cemetery, virtually every time, I always point to it and go, that's the truth. Because that's where we're all going. Everybody here is terminally ill. You watching me, you're terminally ill. I'm telling you, the moment you were conceived, you started dying. Now, Wyatt was conceived because of my prowess. He exudes from my loins.
Oh, great. Another loins. Well, Good job. Lauren's joke. He did it, everybody. You can go home now. He's told the joke.
It's not a joke. I don't consider you a joke at all. I consider you a very important contributor to society.
I love how much time it took you to formulate the correct, like, you're like a politician trying to figure out the best words to use to check off as many demographics as possible.
I've never voted
just go back
demographic.
to the skeleton jokes, really.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. Can I talk about my Connecticut experience in the?
Your Connecticut experience of visiting a graveyard.
Do you mind?
Hooray.
What's wrong with that?
The fact that you couldn't think of anything better to do.
What do you mean I couldn't think of?
In the whole of Connecticut, the only interesting thing was the dead guy emporium. Really?
The dead guy emporium.
Yes.
That's a funny way to frame.
That's why I said it. Yes.
Cemetery.
That's why I said it.
But here's the deal. We got a great guest coming up, by the way. You gotta love him. Black guy. Got to bring that up right off the bat. It's crucial because that way you'll get some virtue points if you stick around and watch him. So I walked into the cemetery because it was old, because this is Connecticut. So, in the United States, we think things are old if they were from the 1800s, right? And till I went to England. And I went to the Tower of London, and I'm walking around, and I see this little tiny patch of wall that was just still there, just a little patch of wall. And it said, yeah, this was built by the Romans. And I go, wait, you mean like with the helmet Romans in the leather kind of floppy kind of kilt and poke Jesus Romans built this? It's sitting there. I'm looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
That's old, right?
Yeah.
Oh, unless you go to Egypt. Holy crap, they take it to a whole new level of old. So in America, 1800s, oh, that's old. 17, ooh, getting low. Well, they had stuff from the 1600s because it's Connecticut. And there was a grave of a girl that was probably, I think, 18 years old or maybe 16. So she died at 16, 17, 18. In like the early 1700s. So hundreds of years. Long gone. I don't remember. Nobody knows her. Nobody has a shot at having any idea who this little girl was. And written on her gravestone had a couple skulls. They were into skulls back in those days. Put a lot of skulls on stuff. And this was the poem that was etched into her grave headstone. Youth, look this way as you pass by. As you are now, so once was I. As I am now, you soon shall be. Prepare for death and follow me. After I finished peeing my pants, because doesn't get creepier than that etched on his tombstone. It was the truth. This is where we're going. We're all going to die. We're all out. So when I have gotten on this podcast and I kept talking to you all about what are we doing here in the United States right now? What is it that matters to us? We can get caught up in the technology that we talked about and think how great that is and how important that is, and let's keep moving forward. Or we can get caught up in the politics of it, or we can get talking about, like we do, our freedoms and our liberty, and they're important, they're crucial, right? It allows a human to interact and continue to think of ideas and grow and innovate because we're free to do so, whereas no innovations ever come out of a socialist or communist state because there's no innovation when a bureaucracy runs the show and tries to demand progress or shoehorn innovation. It can't. Humans have to be free to do it on their under their own perspective without any limitations. So I looked at this world of ours and I go, time is running out, man. A new world order is coming. I mean, there's these megalomaniac technocrats, these multi-billionaires, Bill Gates, multi-billion, who's got some of the most farmland, owns most of the farmland in the United States, single owner, I think, wants us to not eat meat, eat vegetables that he creates, of course. And they always have the same goal. There's too many people on Earth. We have to reduce the population. And there's one thing I've noticed about the multi-billionaires that get together at Davos and decide how the rest of us are going to be allowed to live and what eggs we're going to be able to afford or not, what meat we might be able to eat, but maybe not because cow farts is asking too much. I noticed that these multi-billionaires think we need to reduce the human population. They all have that in common, and they also have a second thing in common. I noticed that none of them ever volunteer to go first. How much more evil does it get than someone who is more rich than any of us will ever be, who have who knows how many yachts, how many chateaus in France, Italy, and around the world, who can take private jets and go anywhere they want, anytime, will never have to think about paying for anything ever again, who can have any kind of top caviar, any kind of cigar flown to them round the clock, 24/7, anywhere in the world, anything they want. I mean, it's sickeningly rich. And all they have left to do is decide that the rest of humanity is unfit to continue. And you need to move on so there's more left for them. I got to tell you something. I have never hated rich people. Never. You know why? You know why I never hated rich people, Wyatt?
Because you had no really good way of knowing what it was like to be rich, so you couldn't really judge them on a personal level.
That's a sweet way to look at it, but
It's
no.
a true way of saying that you're broke.
Yeah. The reason I never hated rich people was because I never saw them as a threat. I saw them as an inspiration. I would look at rich folks and say, see what you can do? I can do that. I'm going to shoot for that.
Listen, when it comes to millionaires, absolutely. It's the billionaires with that sort of logic completely degrades, because you can earn a couple million if you really, really work hard. To make a few billion in that same amount of time, you're not doing it ethically. I'm just gonna say.
It's hard.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Unless you were born into the money, going from scratch to billions, it is like mathematically impossible. Like,
sounds to me like a Gen X kid whining.
no, let me put it to you this way. I want to make sure that I get like the correct numbers, but it's something about like 1 million seconds is like a month.
Yeah.
And 1 billion seconds is like 8,000 years.
Okay. So it's a big deal.
Yeah. So 1 million compared to 1 billion.
Yeah.
Such a massive difference. How exactly do you expect to make hundreds of billions of dollars within one human lifetime working a 9-to-5 job? You can't.
Well, not working a 9-to-5 job. That's the point. You got to have a career and an ability to sell things to the whole world on a regular basis and continue, like computers. You got to create a product that people can't not have, and everybody's got to have one. Well, anyways, what my point was, I didn't hate them or resent them. I thought I want to do that. I've always seen it as an inspiration. Even acting, I've always appreciated great actors. I love acting. I've been in a lot of movies. I like it. It's fun. But I never looked at a great actor and I admire them and I honor them, but I never said, oh, they're great. I literally would say, I can do that. Now, maybe I can't, but I never saw it as some kind of threat. I was like, I can do that too. It's my makeup. So to watch these guys now take control over the humanity, I begin to resent them. I begin to despise them, frankly. They're evil. because they have a power we don't have. They run platforms like this that we're on right now to allow guys like us to talk to each other. And if they decide right now, I don't want him anymore, they just push a button. I disappear. That's despicable. The militia of the mind that I told you guys is going to be the next step for Brad Stine Has Issues, is taking this little podcast and moving it into proactive mobilization of Americans. Remember, folks, we have to differentiate now from citizens and Americans. Citizens have been given all the rights and the privileges of being American, but they do not respect or are grateful for it, and I don't believe they should be allowed to be called Americans, or I strip them of the title. American, on the other hand, is grateful for this great nation, grateful for the fact that even though it has flaws, it has spent its entire life trying to fix them and change them. It's grateful for the fact that this nation and the West in general and the free market society has given more wealth and has brought more people out of poverty than any system in human history. It's grateful for a constitution that gives us a Bill of Rights that says these are your God-given rights. Nobody can take it from you. It's grateful for the fact that people want to do whatever it takes to get into this nation because every other nation is a crap hole compared to what they got here, or they wouldn't have left. We're grateful, and we want to keep it free. And the militia of the mind means that the Americans take back the idea that they're the government. Now, I understand. If you're waiting for a Republican to check and balance what's going on in D.C. so that we can get back to some freedom, don't hold your breath. They have failed, and they'll continue to because they're in on this. They're not clearly serious, or they would have fixed things. They would have done things. Democrats have made it very clear. The left owns them, and they are evil. They'll take evil to steps we never thought possible. They have put up a frickin' New York City statue honoring abortion, the butchering of babies. You would have thought that as civilization got more advanced, butchering babies would have been considered a no-no. Off-putting. Now it's a celebration. I told you guys, if you don't decide that you have something worth dying for, you will have nothing worth living for. Guaranteed. I believe this country is worth living for, but only if it's worth dying for. And let me tell you something. There was a playoff football, but let me show you something. Those of you watching me, for the most part, are conservatives or Christians. Now, you might have stumbled on me and you leave. You don't want it. Or you said, hey, I am this. Or you're not, but you're watching. But for the most part, if you hang out long enough or you've seen my comedy, you know what this is. You know what I stand for. And you're probably watching me right now. You're probably a Christ follower Christian or a conservative or a patriot. And that's why you watch. Because I talk about things that you agree with and believe it. And then I talk about the militia of the mind. And I talk about how you're going to be responsible for the territory that you inhabit, your neighborhood, your family, your school system, your job, your friends, your enemies. You're responsible for how you do or don't interact with that and what you want this nation to continue to keep or what to lose. And only if you take a stand will we understand what that means. Jack Phillips, who has Masterpiece Cake Shop in Colorado, got sued because he didn't want to decorate a gay wedding cake. Now, people always say it as he wouldn't bake them a cake. He said, I'll bake you a cake. I won't decorate it. That was the key. That's the artistic nuance. I can't put words and my artistic expression onto something that I believe is immoral because of my religious belief. I will bake you your cake. I'll give you all the stuff. Or there's a guy right down the street. He'll do whatever you want. That way I get what I want, freedom. You get what you want, freedom. And we live to agree to disagree agreeably. That was freedom. But he got sued. And he took to court. This poor guy, and he had death threats. His family is threatened simply because the most intolerant bigots on earth have a letter attached to their perspective. They are totalitarian, despicable, hateful bigots that cover themselves in this idea of what a good, virtuous person they are, that simply bringing culture up to speed and advancing. Now, it's not advancement to be a bully and to be an evil to others that you disagree with. There's nothing advancing anything there. You're just the old school demonic destroyer of anybody that gets in your way. You're not only you're not virtuous, you don't know what that word is. Well, I just say that because he won his case, and it went to Supreme Court, and he won. If you're an artist, you don't have to participate in something you don't agree with. It's no different than some guy, some singer, going to some... if you went to a Biden rally and you sang a song because you liked him, and then Trump said, hey, I like you. I want to hire you to come here. You said, I don't want to. What if it was illegal for you to say no? No. If you play music for him and I want to hire you, you got to play music for me. I don't want to play my music because I don't agree with your point of view. It's that simple. Nobody would think that's unusual, and yet that's exactly what they've done to this Jack Phillips, who now has been sued again because an attorney called him and said, I want you to make a gender transition cake, pink to blue, blue in the middle, pink. I want you to do that, and then I want you to make a satanic cake with Satan smoking a doobie. This was a attorney who did this to file the lawsuit against him. They are relentless in destroying this man's life. These are evil, despicable human beings. Now, my belief is, my hope is, that he will win this case again. They will have shot themselves in the foot again. A victory for freedom and free speech will happen once again in America. But he has to go through this hell. But my point is, it's his territory, and he's fighting back. What am I saying to you guys? There was a football playoff going on this weekend. Did y'all see it? Huh? Did your team win? I didn't see it. Don't know who won. You know why? Because I don't watch football anymore. Because they betrayed America. The moment that guy kneeled during a game and despicably crapped on that flag of ours, instead of saying, nope, I will stand up and respect it because it gives me the freedom to dissent. I will play my game because that's what these people came to see. When I leave and become a civilian and no longer part of this experience of giving this entertainment to people that I get paid way too much money for giving way too little back to society because I don't care how great you are at sports. Who cares? We don't need you. And I love sports. You go out into public, put on your civilian suit, you go protest all you want. That's freedom. You get on that place and we sing a national anthem and you kneel your knee and make up a false narrative to despise people and despise this nation. I don't buy it. So I said, I'm out watching the NFL. They gave money to Black Lives Matter, a Marxist organization that said it wants to destroy the nuclear family and destroy everything that is America, and they gave to these people. I will never watch an NFL game again the rest of my life. I will never watch an NBA game their side because they did it too. And it looks like I'm going to have to abandon baseball, which was one sport I loved that was given to me by my dad so we could be Dodger fans together. And that was his pennant that he had as a kid from Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Dodgers. One guy from the NHL said, I don't want to do a gay pride puck thing. I'm sitting out. And he was lambasted because they don't believe in freedom. They believe in you demand, you live and do and love and support everything we tell you to or we'll destroy you. That's what they consider freedom. No, it isn't. You're frauds. I'm calling you on it. Militia of the mind. But you guys, I'm talking to you, my people who love me and love this show and believe in freedom and conservative values. You watched the football game. You went back and said, I don't care that they crapped on my flag. I'm over it now. Let's get back and watch the bread and circuses. How are we going to win, guys? When nobody will take a stand for anything. Now, you're good people. You're conservative Christian patriots for the most part if you're watching this. Not the people overseas, obviously. But this is my territory. I was born here. I'm responsible here. You're good folk. if you will compromise, if you don't think that, oh, I don't want to be inconvenienced and not get to watch my show. My dad died in 59 years old from brain cancer. The one thing I had from the time I can remember to the time he died was we had the Dodgers. He loved them. He passed it on because that's what sports was supposed to do. We had that beautiful thing. I have to abandon now. The Dodgers, by the way, who had Jackie Robinson, who broke the color barrier and made this amazing civil rights demonstration of America, slowly but surely trying to show what it looks like to be equal for all. And I just can't, out of principle. But I also wouldn't wear a mask walking down Chicago O'Hare Airport in 2020 when everybody else had one. Said, will somebody jump in and take off your mask too, please? Will anybody play with me? No, you won't! Rule me! Just don't take away my football. But they hated on you. They hated your country. They despised your country. They gave money to a organization that had created and held use of Antifa, terrorists destroying cities, used by the Democratic Party, a party that's now has their jackboot thugs out destroying our nation. And when it's time for American citizens to say, I love America, I will not watch the corruption of its sports teams that gave us something that a Democrat and a Republican and a gay and a straight and a fat and a skinny and an old and a young could come together and love their sport and the community and the team and the city that it represented. It gave us something of continuity, and we could all sing our national anthem together because we were all Americans, even though we had different teams we loved. We could all eat our hot dogs and drink our beer or Coke, whatever you drank, and we could sing, take me out to the ball game. We had this beautiful continuity that's been corrupted and destroyed by the leftist wokest cancer that must be killed if we're going to survive. And you didn't. You just compromised. The militia of the mind is going to be us standing back and say we're going to make some big, it's going to be some big decisions going to be made now. Some disciplines are going to be expected about Americans now. We're going to have to protest. We're going to do what's necessary. We're going to walk away from some of these institutions until they crumble and they're destroyed from within so that they realize the cost of what happens when you take this great nation for granted. There was a quote. I was been reading Augustine, Thomas, Augustine, I was reading his just war theory. You can put it up, Wyatt. I've been his just war theory concept, because I realized if I'm going to war as a Christian, I have to. It has to be ethical. I have to understand what has been the Christian traditional justification for going to war with guns and dead human beings. Because I'm a Christian. I believe in life and pro-life and defending life. I believe all life is made in God's image. So I've been studying this to try to understand how this works. But the militia of the mind, you remember this, the Second Amendment is a militia of guns. You're allowed to grab guns and come against the government if they're trying to steal your freedom. That's what it was for. It was literally for a totalitarian government. Well, I've said, and just war theory says, that the last case scenario is guns and bloodshed. It has to happen because we're humans and we fight, and wars have always happened, and unfortunately it's part of the deal. But it's the last case scenario. So I said, what if we had a militia of the mind where we start out thinking and out living and out committing to and out doing the necessary things and the disciplines and the sacrifices to try to restore some kind of continuity to this nation. And I've got some ideas of how I'm going to help you guys, if you want to join the militia of the mind, how we're going to start doing this to take freedoms back in America. And Augustine wrote a letter to someone when they were discussing this idea of war and just war. And he talked about how it's better to not have to, and what you don't want to do is have to have a gun and shoot people. I don't want to do that. None of us do. So he said this, and this is before, I read this after I'd already come up with the idea of a militia of the mind. Augustine said, "But it is a higher glory still to stay war itself with a word than to slay men with the sword, and to procure or maintain peace by peace, not by war. For those who fight, if they are good men, doubtless seek for peace. Nevertheless, it is through blood. Your mission, however, is to prevent the shedding of blood. Yours, therefore, is the privilege of averting that calamity which others are under the necessity of producing." That's what I want to see happen. Americans, not citizens, Americans, returning to an absolute line in the sand that states we are going to defend this nation to the death. Now that death could be metaphorical. It could be the death of a job, the death of my reputation, the death of my freedom, my death of my safety. Could be your death of your life. Like I said, this baker's lives, he's been given death threats because he wouldn't decorate a cake, folks. How does it get more pathetic and evil than that? How does it get more un-American than that? So I'm going to create a subscription for, I think, Brad Stine Has Issues. And it's going to be $3, I think. $3 a month. So it's going to be nothing. And from that $3 a month, I'll have ask the guests that I have that I'm bringing more and more on some special question. I saw Ben Shapiro do this, so I didn't make this up. Some interesting question. I say, now I'm not gonna. You don't get to hear this one, but if you come over and subscribe, you'll get to hear these special answers. Just little tokens of thanks. But I want to get 10,000 Americans. That's a lot. That say we're in the militia of the mind. We're going to have to get a logo. And if you all want to help, submit some logo ideas. To be one, we're just all doing this together as Americans, just grassroots. I don't care. But we'll have T-shirts or so, maybe hats. Maybe we'll have candidates that become school board members or the next senators or Congress or go to school. But we have to do something, and we have to do it now. I don't want a podcast that just tells you how stupid and evil the left is, and they are, and how great and altruistic the right are, because they're not necessarily. I mean, they have ideas that have more of that construct, but they're certainly not. The Republicans aren't doing it. They're frauds. Frauds! Judas! Oh, I despise Judas more than Satan. Satan's already judged. I already know what I get with him, but not the guy that tells me he's on my side and then lied about it. Oh, the despicable Republicans. They're all in on it, guys. Don't wait for them to save us. Don't wait for the juries to save us. Don't wait for the judges to save us. Don't wait for the Democrats to save us. Don't wait for the executive branch to save us. Don't wait for the military, folks. It's going to have to be Americans, citizens, just regular folks like us who get together and say, we've had enough. We're taking back freedom. I'm going to bring on a guest right now that's going to talk about that. His name is Kevin Jackson. I've known him for a long time. You might have watched The Blackosphere. He was a commentator on Fox and Friends for a while, and then he got fired because he called somebody skanky hose or something like that. So they got rid of him. But he's a truth teller. He's a true conservative. And as I told you guys, if we're going to have national conversations about really difficult issues, we need to be able to ask the real questions to try to figure this stuff out. He and I are going to be doing a tour very quickly here in Tampa, Florida. And we're going to be doing a show together. You can come out and see us with Tim Wilkins, three of us. The Unapologetically American Tour. You can see some stand-up comedy. Black guy tall, strong bodybuilder Tim Wilkins and me. But we are doing whatever we can to make this all happen. I'm going to be in Austin, Texas, by the way, in March. I'm looking for a church or a venue that would like to bring me in and do a comedy show on the 2nd. And if you know anybody, let me know. Have them PM me. But for right now, I want you to listen to Kevin and his perspective from a black perspective of his life and what a true American looks like and what the militiamen are going to be looking like. All different colors, shapes, genders. But folks, here's where we sit. And those few people watching from out of the country, they're probably just watching to wonder, will they be able to keep this republic? Because holy smoke, if they go down, there's not another sanctuary left. So folks, enjoy this interview. Get inspired. And then get prepared for war. I give you Kevin Jackson.
Hey guys, as you know, on Stine Has Issues, I always bring in the greatest guests in the world. I actually have a giant list of great guests, and they get in line and they wait out my front door, and I bring them in one at a time, and we have amazing discussions and talks. And one of the things that I think you guys have seen that I'm trying to accomplish, and this is really important that you grasp this, the greatest dilemma that is facing America is our inability to deal with the reality of what is true and what is false, what is real information and what is lies. It is the beginning of history. Lies and truth has started the whole human race, and it's where we still are today. And so I realized when my podcast began to grow, and as you all know, I didn't know I was going to have a podcast. It kind of came about organically. But the single biggest thing that mattered to me, especially as a comedian, was that you have to be able to tell truth, and you have to be able to get to the root of what is really out there, or you can't accomplish anything. You can't heal. You can't get clarity. You can't even approach solutions if you can't speak about issues, raw and sensitive issues, and bring them up. And so I realize that if this show is going to do any good, it has to allow people to not only be informed, but give you marching orders as how to affect the culture and the people that you're around. You are responsible for your territory. So I began to bring guests on and said, you know, of different ethnicities, of different political views, whatever, and I am able to come to them honestly and say, hey, here's what I think, or, you know, being a white guy, sometimes I feel this and that. And nobody's going to cancel nobody. We're going to be able to speak these truths because then maybe, just maybe, we can find some solutions or at least get to understand each other's perspectives so we can have some kind of sense of a United States, which is being destroyed in America. Well, the good news is, tonight, my guest is someone who I've known for many years who has such a great perspective on these issues because he is a minority, and he would never admit to that or say he was because he doesn't believe in that. He is an American. He is a patriot. He is an originalist. He believes in the First and Second Amendment. He believes in the Constitution. He also is a conservative, but he's also bold and courageous, and he speaks his mind, and it's cost him, but that's the cost of freedom, is sometimes you take some hits. And I'm proud that he's a warrior. He's also somebody that I have begun to build a comedy tour with called the Unapologetically American Tour. Tim Wilkins and Kevin Jackson, who I'm about to introduce, are creating this so that you can come and laugh together, but also get some truths about America. So this is my honor to bring him on and to let us just get to what's going on in America and see if we can find some answers. If not, at least you enjoy the ride. So please welcome Kevin Jackson. Kevin,
What's
how
up,
are you, my brother?
Boy?
How are you, buddy? That was a long
intro. You and that mostly white audience I know you got there, Brad.
I do. Well, you know, I know that's true because I got Ireland that watches me, Australia, Canada, South Africa, who else? England. I get these. I don't, trust me, I don't know.
Even when you go to Africa, you take the whitest country, Brad. What's up?
I had to find a place where I could blend. So in Africa, but you know, it's funny because you know when you and I first met, it was years ago. You were kind of familiar, I guess, with my comedy.
Oh yeah, absolutely was fanatic about your stuff, man. I thought, and I still believe this, by the way, you were one of the top comedians ever, and a well-kept secret, sadly. And you know, and to be honest with you, that's why we started the Unapologetically American Comedy Tour. Was I wanted to feature guys like you that I said people need to know what you're saying, because look, we have no agenda. Comedy is about observation. It's about perspective. It's about all the things that you talked about. And, you know, I love your brand of comedy because it's not only, it's deep. It makes you think. It's cerebral is the way I would describe it. And of course, you've got different stylings. I call you a clean Sam Kinison meets Robin Williams meets, you know, Dave Chappelle, which are some very, very good names, by the way.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
Right, but it's true. And anybody that's seen your brand of comedy understands what I'm talking about. Mine is more Chappelle-esque in the sense that I cut it based on this kid growing up poor who lost his mom before he turned 5 years old, became very mean-spirited, spent my time in the martial arts because I was mad at the world. Nobody sent me to therapy. Black people don't go to therapy, especially poor black people. And then my dad was in prison when my entire life for the most part. So my comedy was born of that angst and you know, being a young pathological liar because I didn't want people to know that my dad was in prison. And, you know, and all these other experiences, the pressure of being this black kid growing up in the 60s, being told, you know, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, but noticing that all the angst and the strife being created in my life was being created by people that look like me and might even be family. And so my comedy morphed into this idea of correcting the wrongs. White people aren't as bad as you've been telling me. The government isn't as good as you're telling me, you know, and there are lies about, in fact, everything around me, you have to learn how to discern it properly. And so it became disarming, telling white folks, hey, it's okay to be white. I mean, you've seen my stand-up. It's meant to make you, to disarm the whites and get them off of this idea that you're being judged by the color of your skin and not the content of your character. I seem to remember somebody famous saying that's not what we're supposed to do. So it was born of that. And then as it's morphed into this crazy world that wants to lead us away from God, away from capitalism, away from loving each other for who we are and not gender and race and sexual orientation and things like this. And it just gets funnier and funnier and funnier and crazier. I mean, I joked at one of my events one time, I said, hey, I was kind of called at the last minute because Hunter Biden was getting his adult video award, so they brought me in, you know. Well, you know, it's a funny joke, political or otherwise, but it's really meant to bring light to the notion that this guy that's guilty of a lot of crimes, in my opinion, that he's documented himself, and yet he's being called a Renaissance man because he wrote a book, and now he's doing kiddie art. And I'm saying to myself, how crazy can the world get, and why are we not allowed to laugh at this side of things politically? Right. That not only go into political, Brad, but get into the pop cultural element of, oh, it's okay to do drugs on camera and be the president's son and not take care of your child that you had with a stripper and not claim the child, not pay child support. And the world will embrace you and call you a Renaissance man. I find that very funny.
Well, and I think that in the Renaissance time, they used to have a guy called the Village Idiot. And perhaps that's Hunter's claiming putting his flag in the sand.
His stamp of approval.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this then, because this is really what my podcast has begun to try to explore. And it's absurd that this would be innovative. But what I've tried to do is say, if we're going to have, and I've said this a million times, but since you and I have not had an interview yet, I'll just sort of bring you up to speed. I've said for a long time on my show that whenever something hits our nation that has cultural relevance, but it's hot button, whether it's George Floyd, if it's Antifa, if it's BLM, whatever, if it's Take a Knee, you will hear people say this, because there's always usually some kind of catalyst that launches this big sort of powder keg that goes off. Something big has happened that people are focusing on. They'll say, we need a national conversation.
Right.
We need a national conversation on race. We need a national conversation on racism. We need a national conversation on equity, blah, 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 blah. And I've always said, we can't, because a conversation goes two ways.
Right.
I dignify you. I don't have to agree with you. Matter of fact, the conversation that actually is interesting is one where we don't agree, where we're actually trying to figure out the tapestry of this conversation and unweave the flaws and see if there's some truth that we can all agree to.
Sure.
Because there was a time in history where the truth was where everybody was trying to land, right. So at least we knew what the game was. We had some rules that we could discover, and the only way we can find those rules is to abandon our own desires and feelings if they're not true. Well, that's gone. That's gone, and postmodernism began that process of saying there is no truth, there's nothing real, make up your own ideas, and now we've moved into sort of lived experience, which is just a new word for subjective opinion, as truth. Well, we can't have that. So bringing you on is a little bit of it's not quite the perfect solution. And the reason I say that is because, yeah, you're black. That just happens to be your melanin count. Right. You're an American. But I know that you don't subscribe to victimhood. You don't subscribe to wokeism. You don't subscribe to Marxism. You don't subscribe to equity. You're a conservative. So let's start there. You just described yourself when you brought your bio in. Your father was in prison for most of your life, I guess. You said you lost your mother. You grew up in the hood. Yeah, kind of. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly everything about it. So you kind of had the perfect storm for victimhood. You are the guy that if you want to claim your medal for victimhood and go get your reparations, you have all the qualifications. And it doesn't sound like there were people in your immediate influence that were necessarily going to bring you out of that and give you some inspiration that said, no, pull yourself up. You can do this. I believe in you. So somewhere you found this revelation.
Well, let me interrupt you
Go
and
ahead.
tell you that it wasn't so much of a finding of it. My grandparents were Democrats, but they were conservatives, and they built meritocracy was in everything I did. And in fact, my grandmother used to say something that could be construed as racist, but she didn't mean it racist. But she would say to me, Kevin, you got to be twice as good as them white boys. No matter what I did, whether it was sports or academics, her thing was you have to be twice as good. And I don't know why she said twice as good. Why didn't she say 10 times good? But she always said twice as good. And it's strange how a worm gets into your head that says you got to be twice as good, twice as good. And so I studied harder. I worked harder. I was naturally gifted in many things because my dad, despite his misgivings, and he was a scoundrel, he was a brilliant man. He was just brilliant in evil stuff. My mother was very smart and very intuitive, and I never knew how much I was like her until I was around other family members who would say, man, you are just like your mother. I was inquisitive. I tell people this, the secret to life is have an intellectual curiosity about things. You know, my intellectual curiosity about Brad Stine was, how does Brad come up with these really deep concepts? And I studied your humor. I didn't just go, oh, Brad's funny. I had an intellectual curiosity about you, which is what led us to do the tour. And I said, because this guy is one of the best comedians out there. He needs a bigger voice. So I had an intellectual curiosity about everything and everybody. And my older brother would pose stupid things. Like he'd say, he'd come home from college. He's 9 years older than I am. And he would say, he's technically my cousin, but we were raised together. I have a brother who's 15 months older than me, a biological brother. But my older brother, who's my cousin, he would come home and he'd say, Ferrari versus Ford, pick up. Who wins? And I'd immediately go, Ferrari. And he'd go, you don't even know the terrain. And I'd go, ah. So he'd make me curious. Well, what's the terrain? And so he'd give me the terrain, and it would be another gotcha, and another gotcha, and another gotcha. And what I figured out early on in life is ask questions. Start seeking answers. Don't assume. Don't pretend. You know, be looking for things to form those opinions. And so I came up with this concept called the black sphere when I got political. And the idea was a sphere was the most voluminous element in space. And for those who don't know, my degrees are in electrical engineering, computer science, and math. So I saw the sphere as the most volume of anything that can be held. And I made it the black sphere because it was like a black hole. And if your thought process, if what you brought to the world was more powerful enough to escape that gravitational force, then it was worth paying attention to. But what the sphere allowed me to think about was, don't think of anything at any particular point, because wherever you have a point in the sphere, there's something equal and opposite. And so whenever I approach a problem, a situation, my first thing is, what would the other side say or do if this were the truth? We play this thought process all the time. What would be happening to a Trump kid if they were doing what Hunter Biden did? We all know the answer to that. It would be absolutely pure HE double crooked socks for the Trump family if we switch places with the Bidens and the Trumps. So when you play those intellectual games, you can come to the truth, because here's the truth. If Donald Trump and his family did what Biden did, and I'm just using this as an example, I'd be just as mad at the Trumps as I am at the Bidens. And that's when you know you're really seeking truth. Right. And of course, being a Christ follower, somebody who actually believes that I'm just a cog in the wheel, that no matter how big I get in my worldly, earthly terms, I'm nothing compared to my heavenly Father, knowing that is what drives most of us Judeo-Christian conservatives for better. So look, I don't have a dog in the fight. You can give me the label of conservative. You can give me the color of black. You can give me whatever label you want. I'm going to tell you what I am. I'm a person who seeks the truth, even when it hurts me. And because I feel like we've been so pressured, Brad, into, just powder keg of don't let your thoughts out and emotions out, because woke will get you, cancel culture will get you, etc. I said, you know what? I will prove to you I'm immune to cancel culture. I got fired from Fox for speaking the truth. Ask me if I care. When they called and told me, Kevin, this is going to change your career, this could ruin you, and I said to the executives at Fox News, you people think way too highly of yourselves if you think you can ruin me, because I know who I am, and I know what I'm capable of, and there is nobody on this earth that can ruin me except me. So when you ask yourself where did all this come from, it comes from a family who was steeped in religion, who had the wrong political ideology based on the way they were raising me, but they didn't have the wrong identity because they knew we were conservatives. And my grandmother would say, if you wake up and find yourself in some horse dung, get up and look for the pony, because that was the optimism we were raised with. That if you worked hard, if you did play by the rules, if you did it the right way, and you outworked and didn't complain, eventually you would get what you need to get out of life. And that's the way I've lived it.
Well, and obviously most rational human beings, and certainly Americans, would have grown up with what you just said, or at least had heard about that and reverenced that and believed that and applied that. And Kevin, what you just said is now considered racist. They now call, this, I cannot imagine a more demeaning perspective than to say that to work hard, to be self-sufficient, to believe in yourself, to try to strive to greatness, to not see yourself as a victim, is now considered whiteness. Right. They're trying to disparage us, but they're literally saying these great virtuous attributes. My people's the only ones that figured that out. It's so, It is so insulting.
It
Now, I'm
is.
not black, and I know you're not either. I mean, people don't know what I'm talking about. I just know you. I mean, we've been friends a long time. You're not black, but your melanin level is darker than mine, so that's how we reference folks, right? But you don't think that way, and obviously the way you think, you know, the Bible says as the heart, you know, the mouth speaks as the heart is. That you are who you say you are, and that is what you speak into existence, and that's what you do. But something, the only reason I hesitate talking to you is because I know you, and so I know you don't think like the typical leftist black person. So I know you don't consider yourself a representative of black culture in America, but by the same token, you certainly would have more access and knowledge and understanding of that vibe than I would.
Right.
So
I see where you're going. So
Yeah.
here's what I would say to the audience and to you as my friend. I actually do consider myself a representative of black culture, but it's a continuum of a lot of things. Now, the problem is America has been taught that black culture is this one thing that we ascribe to, which is this culture of, you know, lazy, handout, woke. Now, you know, every white people are guilty of something and owe me this, that, and the other. There's a large swath of blacks that espouse to black culture, if you will, that have we don't buy into that whatsoever.
yeah,
And from a cultural standpoint, I mean, you know, okay, I don't listen to, quote, hip hop music. One could say, well, Kevin, that doesn't make you black. I know many blacks who maybe dabble in hip hop, but that's not their favorite music genre. I love golf. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't. I thought it was a stupid white man's game, but now I love it. So we evolve into who we are, and it has nothing to do with the color of our skin. It has to do with the people you're around and the culture that you build for yourself. And the problem in the black community is we've been told this is what you will be, black person. This is how I will think about you, black person. And what happens is somebody like me comes along, and then people go, well, Kevin, you don't seem like the average black. Well, that may be true, but I could say to you, Brad, the way you think, you don't seem like the average white, right? You know what you do seem like? You seem like the very superior Brad, not the average Brad. You are Brad, and I know you for who you are. But we're the only group of people, I shouldn't say the only, but the most judged as a group of any other culture that I'm aware of, because there's this idea of what blackness is supposed to mean in this country. And it is patently ridiculous because we are so different. We are so non-monolithic. Now, what they've managed to do is do a head game on us to say, you know, as Biden says, you ain't black if you didn't vote for me, and you ain't black if you don't, Democrat, you ain't black if you don't want reparations, you ain't black if you don't espouse these certain things, if you don't believe that George Floyd was right, despite the dude being a drug-dealing counterfeiter, I'm supposed to revel in what he did because because he got himself killed. Or, Kevin, I want to put 2 bullets in your head and 1 in your heart because you're exposing what Michael Brown Jr. really was, which is a thug who robbed a store and got himself killed. And you don't want to espouse to the black condition and say, it's okay. As Sharpton said, he wasn't really stealing because technically white people owe us this anyway. That is absolutely ridiculous on any level. And as I say in my comedy act, I wish I were white so I could show you white people how to actually act like white folks and stop getting pushed around on the idea of your melanin being less than what it is today. Because I know white people that can tan and be as dark as I am. And I know this, when I'm out of the sun, I get pretty light. So it's not about that. We're so much deeper on a different level. And I know we're not being funny, Brad, 2 comedians are talking, but I really want people to understand that these subjects are much deeper than you get in the media, in the mainstream drive-by. We literally get drive-by assassinations of the real America in the lexicon and the discussion. We get drive-by assassinations of what should be deep and honest discussions that ultimately vet this out, that we are nothing but children of God who don't care about race, gender, sexuality, and these things. Doesn't mean we agree. Doesn't mean that I condone I don't condone a person's gay lifestyle any more than I condone bank robbery. But I don't care if you're gay. I do care if you're a bank robber. Okay. So that we can show these nuances, and what people will learn about us ultimately as conservatives is that we are the best people on the planet. We don't care. We're going to tell you when you're wrong. Brad, if you had a drug problem, as good friends as we are, I'm going to tell you right now, I would say, Brad, you got to lay off the drugs.
Yeah.
In as much as I would tell you anything else, and I would expect us to do that as friends.
Well, so let me, of course. And, I guess it's kind
drugs,
of
Brad.
when I look at this idea of with the critical race theory that began to sort of really deconstruct Western culture and turn it into whiteness. It's, again, such an insult to the rest of humanity, who's like, what do you mean? Is logic is white? So they're kind of assuming we're a superior race because we use logic. You can't survive as a human and not be logical. You can't survive. So the foolishness of this, the inconsistency with it, it's funny because I've seen it in this sort of power grab, and it's all about power. It's all about somebody trying to control and rule the rest of us. And one of the concepts they'll use is cultural appropriation. Hey, you can't wear that. That came from my culture. You can't do that. That came from my culture. And I begin to experiment with a joke about that, but I talk about, what we now call cultural appropriation. We used to call sharing. Where I thought of this, and now I want to use it. And you thought of this, and can we use it? And in a way, if I was dressing in something that came from an African culture or Hispanic or whatever, or ate a burrito, I'm not appropriating it. I'm honoring it. Hey, I like this too. Thank you for providing this to the human race. And now it's suspect. And so when somebody says logic, reason, mathematics, hard work, entrepreneurship, exercise is white, it not only is it irrational, it's just demeaning. It's absurd.
Well, there's a couple things. There's a couple things that I don't want to forget because I'm getting older.
Go
now.
ahead.
So let me just say this. The first thing is this. It's funny to me when you look at civilization and the progress of civilization, and I go, man, thank God for white people. Because without white people, the stuff that we wouldn't have, in terms of cultural appropriation, I will trade my cultural stuff for your cultural stuff any day of the week as a black man. Because let me tell you, there are no cars being manufactured in Africa. Africans are not building satellites to go up in space like Elon Musk is as a South African, but he's an American now. They're not coming up with a computer. It was white guys are the guys sitting around going, wow, I think we could do this better. I think we could do this faster. So I have no problem piggybacking on the cultural appropriation that I get from white folks. That's my first thing. And there are black people that'll look at me and go, "That Kevin, you're talking about what black people can't do." I'm telling you what black people didn't do. Black men didn't look up at the moon and go, "I'm going to go there." Some white dude did that. He decided, I want to jump off of this planet, escape gravity, jump through various layers of atmosphere, and I'm going to go up and see what's on that other planet. Because there ain't a black guy I know that would have done it. We would have been still looking around going, hey, I like this river that's running through, and I hope it stays here. So let's be real about that. Number two, what's interesting to me when we talk about the browning of America, this idea that white people are running this or that. First of all, white people are the minority of people in the world. Don't believe me, look it up. You're the minorities. There are more Asians. There are more people of Middle Eastern descent. There are more people of brown descent than there are white folks. But what white people bring is civilization, civilized behavior to things, and they call it colonization. Well, that colonization is what has built civilization. It's made us not a warring society, but a good society. Yeah. But here's what you won't hear. You'll hear about the browning of America, that white people are afraid of the browning of America. White people are not the majority in America. They even count Arabs as white folks in America. Most people don't know this. They count Spaniards as white folks. So look at the real demographic and you'll find out white people are not the overwhelming people in America. Well, here's what's most interesting. You will never hear a discussion in Somalia about why do you not let in more white people? In Namibia, why do you not let in more white people? Pick your country in Africa and tell me where there's some leftists saying, why are you discriminating against white folks? These cultures are practically 90-something% monolithically African. It may be tribal, but they're 90+%. The most homogeneous societies in the world tend to be in Africa, and you'll never hear that complaint. So to me, it's funny that Africans have to be scratching their heads going, these Americans sit around coming up with the strangest stuff. America is made up of every culture, and any culture that wants to be here is in a list to get here, and we let them in, and then we still talk about white people are afraid of the browning of America. White people aren't afraid of anything. They build nuclear missiles. They build submarines that can launch them and destroy any civilization they want. They're not afraid. Stop acting like it. Start understanding. I'm saying this to you white folks out there listening to me. Start appreciating what you've given to society and arguing back all the things that you've given, because you've given more than you've taken. I promise you. And the people who've been, the clothes I'm wearing right now, thank you. The stuff in the room that I sit in, the things behind me, thank you, white people. If I have to say it on behalf of other blacks, fine. But let me tell you, stop apologizing for your birthright, because you're not, with everything that white folks have given, they're not walking around going, yeah, well, the reason why you're driving that car there, black man, is because of me. They're not, what you could be gloating about, you're not gloating about. Because let me tell you, if I did half the crap that white folks did, I would be walking around like I'd be a pimp in a fedora telling you everything I've done for you.
Well, I think that what you said is clearly true. I would say, though, that what I'm, and it's going to sound like I'm, trying to, I don't know, be sensitive or whatever, and you know me better than that. But I don't think it is what white people did, and I think that's the mistake. It's a category distinction that I think is inaccurate. They call it whiteness, but what it really is, whiteness has never done anything. White skin has never gotten to the moon. Black skin has never, become a billionaire philanthropist. Ideas do. Ideas, the idea of the logos, of the idea that there's a way to do things, there's that have a philosophical perspective of how the world works, and putting that into practice is a Judeo-Christian concept. It started with the Israelites, with the Ten Commandments. Here's the rules. Here's how humans should think about God. Here's how humans should think about humans. That became the foundation of every law we know. That brought us into this whole idea of this sort of Christian and Judeo-Christian concept that humans are intrinsically valuable, not instrumentally valuable. All people are equally dignified, that women and men are equal. Every stinking thing the left progressive has hijacked as though they invented it is stolen from Christianity and repurposed into this Marxist cancerous crap that is despicable, because they've never created anything but death in their entire lives, that ideology. So I think what people are ascribing to whiteness, and by the way, thank you for the compliment that we're geniuses and we came up with all this stuff. I'm glad I could loom your shirt for you. Don't remember doing it, but that's cool. But I don't think it's whiteness, and that's where I think it's misunderstood.
Well, here's what I like about this discussion, Brad. So you mentioned earlier, you said when you have people on, you have on people of all different ilks and what have you, because you feel like when there's the conflict, it makes for better discussion.
So where are you going to get anywhere?
Well, but here's what I say. You and I think a lot alike, but we also think very differently. And the nuance of what we're talking about right now is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I still disagree with you.
Yeah.
I disagree. I still tell you that when you look culturally, look at the world wars and tell me where the innovation came. It came from Germany,
Yeah.
It came from Russia. It came from the United States. We built the nuclear bomb, right? Now, you could argue, I mean, I'll put it this way. There weren't a whole lot of people that looked like me working on the Manhattan Project.
But again, remember, what you're right. But what I'm saying is, we're kind of saying the same thing. The modern science, the scientific method that created all that things, only came up in one place in human history, in medieval Europe. It's the only place. Other cultures, I'm sure African cultures had, Egyptian cultures, Arabic cultures had some, Chinese had some amazing discoveries. I'm not saying no other culture ever discovered amazing things or created numerals or came up with the concept of zero or all these things that came from other cultures. Nobody's questioning it. But the scientific method, the inductive, deductive reasoning, the ability to sort of do experiments and discover what God has created only came out of the Judeo-Christian ethic of medieval Europe. That's simply true. It's just history. So what I'm getting at is that, to me, is whiteness. Only because the people in medieval Europe were white. They're Anglo-Saxon.
Well, I mean, we're going back to the very beginning, but I'm talking about when you start getting into, the person who deciphered the Enigma machine, the Brit that did that, the person who invented the computer, von Neumann, the person who invented the transistor. You start looking at all, and I worked on projects with these guys. I actually got to meet the guy that invented the transistor. You want to talk about saving the trees and saving the whales and saving the planet? How about the dude that took the vacuum tube and said, I'll make it into a little device that uses 1/1000th of the power, right? And then the evolution of that into substrate materials and epitaxial layers getting smaller and thinner and thinner and thinner, and the invention of the semiconductor, the microcomputers that go into this device right here that would fill 2 Empire State Buildings, one with memory and one with computing power. Everybody holds that power in the power of their fingers. Right now, every bit of information known to man is right here being shown on this computer screen, and we all got one. And let me tell you, there weren't many black people in the invention of those things.
Yes, now, but Kevin, and this first off, I find this hysterical that I'm arguing how white people aren't as great as you think you are. You're trying to explain, no, you guys are better than us.
I'm not saying that.
But but I think that, here's what I think is happening, but it's a great conversation. I feel like you're doing what I am confused about. I feel like they're conflating a skin color with just philosophy, with the way a particular group of people thought about things and how that affected culture. Now, clearly, came out of white culture, I guess, but it's the ideas. Well, ideas aren't colors. God made us all the same.
You're exactly right, but now you're hitting on the real crux of it, and this is where I was kind of headed, because I don't believe white people are better than blacks. I don't believe anybody's better than anybody. But here's what I'll tell you. All of that process that led to that type of thinking, that built this great nation that has more patents, generally speaking, than almost all other nations combined, is because of the American spirit.
Yes.
And what got unleashed in us.
But is American whiteness?
It transcended culture, it transcended gender, it transcended everything except the Judeo-Christian work ethic and methodology that I think is taught in the tenets of the Bible and the way that we're raised in that regard. And you look at other cultures and ask yourself, why can't they achieve that? There are black geniuses. There are geniuses in Africa that you will never know their names. They'll never be discovered because they've been tasked with menial life. There's a Ramanujan in Africa waiting to be discovered and sent to Oxford so he can study math with the great mathematicians, right? But we may never know who that person is. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but there's a methodology of getting to it that Africa is not going to discover, because America is where that comes from. That American spirit is what brings that out. Sure. I designed supercomputers. So my kids are going to probably do amazing things in thought process and as young black men. I have 4 sons, for those of you who are counting, all boys, by the way. And so you can I can see what my kids are going to do because of the way that they've been taught to think, and how the American spirit, which is built on a higher power, let me tell you, the majority of things, Brad, that I remember saying when I entered this business, if you will, of politics, I remember saying to God, God, why me? I've never had an original thought. I literally said that to God multiple times. I've said it multiple times in my life. Every time I thought I had an original thought, I'd go look it up and go, nope, somebody had it. And do you know, there came a period where God said to me, you're going to have so many original thoughts you won't even know how to interpret it. And I can honestly tell you, my brain, it's like you, and I know you'll agree with me, is so fertile in how it interprets and looks at the world now. I have so many original thoughts, and that's what makes us jot down our little comedy material or our deep thoughts for these types of conversations. That's what makes us look at the world through a different prism, if you will, and say, you're not fooling me. I can see the world for what it is. So we know how to filter and what to do. And that's all I'm saying is America offers that. And the spirit of what is behind America is what creates that. And I don't think whatever the left is trying to do, they can't kill that. That's their problem, is they're trying to figure out how do we extinguish that.
Well, it seems though that they're on their way, because the Marxist construct of critical race theory, which came from critical law theory, which came from the Frankfurt School, which came from cultural Marxism, is what got inculcated into the universities. And once academia began to spit out what used to be great American kids trying to move to the next generation into now social justice warriors of leftism. This is really happening. I mean, we are at a crisis point in America. If our academia that's teaching the next generation is teaching our kids hate America, it's terrible, it needs to be deconstructed, it needs to be torn apart, it's systemically racist. You can't have one element of the system that isn't incorporated into its DNA as racist. So if that's true, it's cancer. The whole thing has to be destroyed, and we start over. With what? What are we starting over with? Well, with Marxism, because as long as you do Marxism right, it works. I mean, when Stalin tried it, he didn't do it right. When Mao tried it, he didn't do it right. When Pol Pot tried, he didn't do it right. When all these guys that created the most horrific human rights abuses in human history, all in the 20th century. I mean, these atheist-driven ideologies are quick studies when it comes to butchering humans. No religion has ever come close to what atheists do when they get some power. But that being said, that's now part of our culture, Kevin. That's not what is happening. That's what wokeism is. It is a insurrection on the institutions of America by Marxists. This is communism. This is China-driven. This is real. This is existential threat stuff. This is Civil War stuff. This is holy crap. Put the brakes on, and that can't happen unless American citizens believe they are, in fact, the government, like we're supposed to be. We are a republic, and you say no more. You tell me I'm a racist, and I say, screw you. I'm not a racist. I'm going to sue you for slander until you stop this nonsense. I'm going to make you pay for this crap until you shut your butt up and start dealing with the reality. If we don't have those kind of balls, brother, we're dead.
No, and that's the reason why shows like this are important, and the work that you do is important. And to be honest with you, I think that's why comedy is important. When you can go, I joked one time when they were talking about cultural appropriation, because there was this this white kid with dreads at a college. I don't know if people have seen this video. And the girl says, you're culturally appropriating my hairstyle. And he didn't know he was just like taken aback because he's trying to get to class. And I would have said to him, shut up. You're culturally appropriating my language. Speak in the language of your mother tongue, or don't speak to me at all. Right. Oh, and by the way, take off all those clothes. Yeah. Because you didn't know what clothes were until white people invented it. I would have just eaten her alive. Right. And so the joke of it is that if you want to play the cultural appropriation game, let's do it.
Of course, right? and I have the same joke that I'm experimenting with for the same reason, because but see, that you're right. That's what makes comedy so beautiful, because you can laugh about something almost uncomfortably, but at least you can approach it. Because that's what's being lost in America. You can't even approach dissent because it becomes this sort of racist. If I don't have the goods to outthink you and out-rationalize you and out-logic you, how about I just call you a name and make you self-censor? It's the cowardice. Kevin, nothing became more apparent to me and more revealing to me about citizens, at least half the citizens of the United States of America, than the cowardice and the inability to see liberty as something so sacred, I will never give it away. And by the way, and you don't know this, I've begun to make this a point in my podcast and in general. I no longer consider everybody an American that lives in this country. Now, you're a citizen, but I now consider the difference between being considered a citizen and an American. Because every American's a citizen, but not every citizen's American. If you don't believe in this nation, it's the greatest of all time. If you're not going to defend it, if you're not going to stand for its principles, if you don't believe the Constitution is sacrosanct, if you don't believe that even though we've certainly had mistakes and problems like all nations have, but this is the most ethnically diverse, eclectic, unbelievably freedom-giving nation in human history, if you're willing to give that up, then you're not an American. And I strip you of that title. And I'm going to hold you accountable. You don't get to be one of us anymore if this is who you're going to be.
Well, I agree. And see, that's the thing. When somebody says, well, America did this, and you go, okay, so what do you know about England? What did they do? What do you know about China? What did they do? What do you know about Japan? The only thing you are is a talking point. Yeah. It's just America sucks. We colonized. We did this. So did every other country. So before you start throwing stones at America, how about you actually know some history and tell me, because the minute you pick your country, I'm going to tell you what they did to their people or to other indigenous people, and I'm going to shut you up.
Yeah.
But that's what we should be doing. But going back to the thing we were talking about with comedy, I wanted to make the point that part of my set is I tell people I wish I were white. And I go into all these things I would do if I were white, obviously in a humorous way, but in a way that I want people to go, wow, I hadn't thought about that. And I'm still, like you, refining that, because I think there's an even bigger morsel that I can get to at the end of it. But when we go back to what are we, and I'm going to make your bigger point here, that it isn't about our whiteness in this country. It's about our Americanness in this country. And that's ultimately where I'm heading with that, is that because people would say to me, Kevin, I can't say what you say because I'm not black. And I go, you think I would not be saying this? You think I'm saying this stuff because I'm black and not because I'm an American. I'm saying this stuff because I'm an American who understands that white people are being persecuted. You're being discriminated against. If it were Mexicans, I'd be saying it about Mexicans. It isn't about your whiteness that I'm protecting. It's about your Americanness that I'm protecting. And why am I doing it? Because it happened to my people.
Yes.
So
yes.
I happen to be able to be a pretty good emissary on your behalf. But at the end of the day, I'm saying it as an American who's protecting other Americans.
Right.
And that's the bigger point. And that's what I want our comedy. And that's why this tour, in my opinion, is so important. And it is called the Unapologetically American Comedy Tour. Because, to your point, wit used to be the way people got ahead. In the French culture, they called it ridicule. Ridicule was what got you to court. When somebody said something stupid and you could make them look stupid verbally, you got elevated and could even get to see the king. And the king wanted only the people who were witty around him. And that there was a reason for that, because as I joke all the time, in comedy, there's truth. That's what we point out, is the stuff that people either overlook or are too afraid or ashamed to point out. We're pointing it out because we're going, no, I noticed that. Yeah. And that's our job. But It's also our job as citizens as well.
Yes. Well, and you have a unique vantage point because you have kind of this, you're more dangerous than me in a certain degree, at least under the cultural milieu of America right now, because you have that black card, and it's just simply black privilege. It's part of what's really going on in America, where you have these, you're allowed to riot and call it peaceful. You're allowed, and you know, I'm making a broad, obviously not you personally,
right.
but that's kind of what happened. When a black person riots, it's peaceful. When a black person riots without a mask during a pandemic, they're safe. It was such absurdity of purely proving that there was no science here. This was purely politically motivated, power motivated. But as we get closer to the end of this, interview, Kevin. I really do want to use your expertise in your to try to help my viewers have some marching orders. I really believe in proactive defense of our nation and our freedoms. I'm not a podcast that says, aren't conservatives great? Aren't Christians great? Those people are nuts, aren't they? We all applaud and nothing happens. We just talk about it. I'm not interested in that. There's plenty of guys that are better at that than me. I care about solutions. So when you, what would be the best use and leverage of your expertise? Okay, so as a black guy, and my podcast gives me the freedom to speak like that, because that's what I'm trying to open up, is true dialogue where we don't fear words, concepts. We don't fear any of it. We're just trying to get to the truth, and we trust each other's heart that we care about each other as dignified humans. So what would you tell the white guy who's trying to live his life and get through it, and feels like he's being berated, he's being attacked, he's a racist, he doesn't know what's going on, he's been blindsided? The best way to engage, let's say, some militant black guy, he doesn't even know what he's doing, is there some insider techniques that you can give us that help us approach each other in a way that might be actually effective in some way and helpful?
I'm going to reserve. I'm a very different being in that regard, because I'm very confrontational in that respect. And I would say to you, this is the way I tell people how I deal with life. If I'm confronted on, let's say somebody says, Kevin, you're sexist. And my immediate pushback is, well, you're a sexist. You're a sexist for calling me sexist, because number one, you don't know enough about me to say that I'm sexist. Well, you got fired because you tweeted that the Kavanaugh accusers were lying skanks. So what you don't like is what? The truth of it, or you don't like that they were women? Because had it been Kavanaugh, had it been men that were accusing Kavanaugh of the same thing, saying he was gay and having sex parties, I would have called them lying skanks. So what I'm getting at is this. I'm ready to back up and prove anything that comes out of my mouth. And I'm going to do it unapologetically. I'm not going to mince any words. Let me put it this way. And this is the best advice I can give to anybody under any circumstances. Know your truth. State your truth with the vigor that you would of protecting your child if somebody were threatening your child. Think of it that way, because that's what's under attack. It isn't me. I could shut up. I could have told the line, kept my nice six-figure salary from Fox, still been on there, getting all the praise as I go through airports. Oh, hey, I know you. But you know what? I didn't care. I gave it up because it wasn't worth it. My character is worth it more so than that paycheck. So I would say, look, I'm not going to tell people. I have people say to me, Kevin, I don't know if I should get the jab. They're forcing it at my company. And they said, what should I do? I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'll tell you this. Nobody will put that needle in my arm with mRNA. That's a fact. That's not telling you what to do. I know what the ramifications are long term, and I'm not going to go for it. So here's what I would say to you. When you're confronted with racism and all these other toxically masculinity and all this other stuff, ask yourself, what are the long-range implications if you keep your mouth shut? For me, I have 4 sons. Do I want the world to see them as toxically masculine because they happen to be born males? Of course not. Do I want them to be seen as cisgender homophobes because they happen to not be gay? Of course not. I want them to be judged for who they are. And I'm willing to fight for that in every breath that I take, and I don't care who it is. Now, again, I'm not recommending people do that because it does take a pair, as one of my friends said, the size of Alaska. But I think that as more people stand up and say, I'm not going to let you bully me. I'm not going to let you tell me who I am because you've got some preconceived notion and you don't know who I am. It's not going to happen. Not here. And what I find is the more forceful you are about that, the more quickly people are to go, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were going to fight back. Exactly.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly what is happened, is that people have accepted the self-censorship that has been shoved upon them by a minority group who somehow have self-anointed themselves to rule the nation and our culture and our words and our point of view. It's like, what is wrong with you people? Who don't live? I don't understand people that don't call out absurdity. I don't understand them. We have this LGBTQ, transgender, huge perspective now. And if you were to talk about it, they would say, well, you're transphobic, right? You're transphobic if you disagree with this or you find something problematic with this. And all we're doing is trying to give voice to the oppressed. We're just trying to give voice to people whose voices are not heard. And I'm saying, whoa, 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 whoa. The transgender people's voices aren't heard? They won't shut up. All I hear is their voice 24/7. There's no louder, more consistent, more, clearly a megaphone-driven voice than that perspective, and it is getting and gaining traction and being given and put into the culture and getting laws passed, and now you can take a 9-year-old girl, give her a double mastectomy, and say you can't speak about that. That is child abuse, and there is going to be years from now, years of ramifications of children hating their parents for not protecting them, of doctors who are going to be, I hope, sent to prison for crimes against humanity for this nonsense. This is how big this is. When you are an American, if you believe in America, I'm not talking about you citizens out there who don't give a crap about liberty and are cowards. You proved it when you put your rabbit's foot on mask, that now we've had 41 different worldwide academic research to prove the masks were nonsense. And when you were taking a jab that stated you're still going to get it, still going to pass it, and you're still going to have it, but still take it, that's stupid. You deserve whatever comes to you. I can't fix you. You are, as they say in India, the untouchables. In America, you're the unteachables. I can't fix you. You're broken. You're lost. I pray for your soul, but more than likely, you ain't going anywhere. But the rest of us, those of us who are seeking reality and truth and care about this nation and really care about freedom and liberty, there is no more time to do anything but fight, speak, stand up against anything that is immoral and blasphemous and is destroying the fabric of this nation, which was Judeo-Christian. And I don't care if you don't like it. And I don't care if you think it's untrue. I don't care. You know what?
Amen. And I would say surround yourself with people that will help. It's the same thing. You surround yourself with people from the church and that believe in the higher power, etc. You're going to do good things. You'll watch your character change. But more importantly, onward Christian soldier marching off to war.
Yeah.
Stand up for your right. Stand up for the things you believe in. When I could be standing in a line at a grocery store and I overhear somebody say something political that is different from me, and I'll say, you know what? Completely disagree. I'll just look over and say, I completely disagree with what you just said. And I want them to understand that there are some of us willing to be vocal about it. I remember the mask wars going into Costco and, a guy going, put your mask on. And I go, you would never say that to me without the authority of government. You would never have the guts to say that. Amen. And that's number one. And number two, because of that, I completely dismiss you. I'm not going to pay attention to you because you think you've got some government mandate that allows you to now have dominion over me, right? Because I won't put on a stupid mask.
Right. Well, especially because it was so fear-driven and so forth, as well as unconstitutional.
Right. So, just stay very focused in what it is. You said it earlier, Brad. You've got that little circle of people around you that you influence. And some of us, we can grow it a little bigger because we've either had a national footprint like you and I, or we're going on tour and we get to do more. And I would say this, and I'm not being self-serving. Support the people who are doing the work that you are not willing to do, or they have a bigger megaphone. Yes. We can't do this by ourselves. Look, Kevin Jackson Network, the thing behind me, if it weren't for the philanthropy of people that are getting this stuff, I couldn't put this stuff together.
Yeah.
This comedy tour, Brad, you and I both know there should be people lining up to help get this thing on the road.
And they're going to be. No, they're going to be. So let's get the date out and then the venue, because this is going to air.
February 9th. February 9th in Tampa, Florida, we're doing the Palladium. Well, it's in St. Pete, Florida, but we're doing the Palladium on February the 9th. I think the show starts at 7.
Yes.
And then we're trying to book other dates as we get more dollars. But right now, it's you, me, and Tim that are bootstrapping this thing, trying to get this thing moving. And we need people that understand that voices like ours, getting out there and radiating and spreading this funny version of conservatism and pointing out the absurdity of everything we've talked about seriously today, and what I will tell you is absolutely will be one of the top comedy shows you've ever seen.
Yeah.
If we can do that across the nation, we slowly start to build and people start to talk about the things we're saying, not the Colberts and the Jimmy Kimmels and these comedic hacks, but people who don't have a dog in the fight, who truly want to just point out truth and justice. So that's what I would say to people is support Brad, this show. I know it's growing and I know you're getting a lot of support, but do more.
Yeah.
Look, this is not an off-election year. This is a year we got to get ready for 2024, where we are probably going to have the most important election of our lives yet again. I know they all seem that way, but the closer we get, the more we better buckle down.
Well, February 9th, what's the name of the venue?
The Palladium Theater.
In St. Pete.
In St. Pete. Beautiful theater. You remember when we played there before?
Yeah, no, it is
beautiful theater.
So for all my Florida fans, or if you know people in Florida, please share this interview with those people. It's going to go out on social. We're letting you know. But what we're also trying to let you know is this is a movement. This is a grassroots Americans just deciding. If you show up to this event and the other ones that we want to do, and by the way, if you have a conservative organization, maybe you're Republicans, which don't always prove to be conservative, so maybe you actually want to prove you actually care about this nation and will defend us. And you have a venue in a city close to you, and you say, man, I know we have plenty of groups here that would support something like this. I mean buying tickets, not just saying we want you here, and then you just lay low and get in a hammock and wait for us to do all the work. No. Reach in your pocketbook, start paying tickets. Why? So we can get rich? No. If this place sells up in St. Pete, we're not going to get rich. It's just saying we want to see fellow warriors take money out of their pocketbook, get babysitters, leave their home, walk into this. Why? To laugh, but to show unity. We are conservatives, Americans, Christian Americans. You don't have to be a Christian, but conservative, patriots, and we will support this. We are not going to be pushed around anymore. And what does that have to do with the comedy show? Because you are associating your name, your reputation, with us, with people who are saying these things and standing up. You're saying, I'm not a coward anymore. That's how big this is.
In comedy, Brad, there is truth.
Yes.
And not only are you getting a spectacular show, but to your bigger point is we're saying to the left, you're not going to silence us.
No more.
We're going to talk about all these controversial issues, and we're going to do it in a way that if you were a leftist watching this show, you would laugh like anybody else.
Yeah.
It is not humor made to make somebody upset. And by the way, a clean show.
Yeah.
It's not. There's no cursing or anything like that.
Well, and here's another point too. But when you just mentioned if you were leftist, you would laugh too. See, we talked about how comedy is so important in exposing hypocrisy in culture, or just exposing whatever's going on in culture. But another thing that's important is that sometimes when you find humor in some hot button topics or situations that have been told you kind of hands off, what comedy is doing is it's equalizing everybody. It's actually bringing you the equity you say you want, because comedy historically with the court jester made fun of the king. It allowed the peasant and the monarch to be equal. We're just people trying to figure out. Comedy's about the only performance art form that can really do that. And it's going to let you laugh, and you're going to experience, this is absurd and almost heartbreaking, I have to say it this way, you're going to experience what free speech looks like, because it looks like this. Sometimes you joke about this guy because he's gay, and you joke about him because he's a guy that thinks he's a girl. Then you joke about him because he thinks that his God's better than your God. And then I joke about him because he's fat. And then I joke about him because he's old. And then I joke about her because she's Karen. And then what is the point? We're all humans trying to figure this out. None of us are better than anybody else. And nobody is off limits
Yes.
to be joked about. We're all in the same stinking boat. And that's what this comedy show is about to do, unapologetically American. And Kevin, where can they find you and your podcasts and your radio shows?
Yeah, I hope they will listen, because, you know, we all got cancel cultured, but you can see the banner behind me, the Kevin Jackson Network. There's a little V by that K, but thekevinjacksonnetwork.com has everything that we do, from making movies, the podcast, the comedy show, our philanthropic efforts, everything. And I hope people will listen. And by the way, I hope they'll find me on Wimkin, and I'm going to spell it WIMKIN.com. Social media site that has 8 million people on it, about 500,000 on any given day. And it is the fastest growing and best social media site. I'm going to get Brad over, because we're doing some amazing stuff. You're going to hear a lot more about it here in the future. But Wimkin, WIM is in Mary, KIN.com. Come over, find me, friend me, and download the app on your phone. It's Apple and Android. But you'll love what you see there.
And shall I presume that it's an open market platform?
Open market platform, you know, owned by conservatives, run by conservatives. But again, if the left want to come over and espouse views, come over.
Yeah.
You know, it's a free forum, but it isn't one that's going to cut you off because you have a differing view about your God versus this God, or this vaccine, get unvaxxed, or whatever. Spread, you know, say what you want to say. We'll figure out the truth from the lies. I think we're bright enough people to do that.
Yeah.
But it's a well-kept secret. 8 million folks, 500,000 active on any given day, growing all the time. By the way, Sorbo's joining me over there, and many others, many of our friends. So I'm hopeful I can get Brad over, and a lot of the folks that listen to the program, because we need a platform like Wimkin. And I'm not going to go into more detail because it takes too much time. But just join me there. You'll find out it's a really good place to be.
Well, Kevin Jackson, you're my friend. You're a fellow American, and I really appreciate your courage. Seriously, brother, if individuals don't stand alone, if necessary, to speak truth, there's not going to be anywhere for us to find inspiration. And for those of us who have stood for truth, and especially in the midst of the corona, which really exposed where the courage and the cowards were, if we don't realize we're not alone, because you feel awfully alone when you're saying the emperor's naked, because only one kid said that. You feel awfully alone, and so suddenly you look around, you find out, no, there's a Kevin Jackson out there. Oh, no, there's a Kevin Sorbo out there. Oh, there's a Kirk Cameron out there. Oh, there's a Lauren Boebert out there. There's some people that are saying, no, I'm going to fight, and I'm just praying and believing you'll come alongside and lift me up, because on some days I'm gonna in the dirt. I need you to pick me up, but don't worry, because one day you're going to need me, and I'll pick you up too. That's what it means to be an American. God bless you, brother. Thank you so much for coming on. And you know we're going to do this more because it's such an important conversation, and it's the free speech that's been missing in America. But you and I can organically, little by little, help bring it back. Thank you, brother.
Anytime, brother.
Okay, buddy. See ya. So that's what it looks like. That's what happens when you actually have a national conversation with a black guy and a white guy. It's not complicated. You know why? Because it had nothing to do with our color. It had to do with our point of view. It had to do with what we believed in. It had to do with what we were trying to accomplish. And as you can see, what really matters is that you have an ideology that either connects or doesn't connect. And by the way, I'm going to bring on guests that do not agree with me because, frankly, they'll make a more interesting guest. And what I'm really curious about is, can we find any common ground? Can I maybe provoke them to think differently about what it means to be conservative or a Christian? Or maybe to change their mind, or maybe, just maybe, they'll have something to explain to me that I can't overcome, and I have to change my mind. Why? Because the key to a life of virtue is that you care more about truth than how you feel. It's very simple. A man of virtue, when what he believes is different than what is true, he changes what he believes. To the left, to the woke, to the progressive. When what he believes goes against what is true, he changes the truth. That's demonic, because it's living in lies, and it can't continue in this nation and think we're going to get anywhere. It has to end. Life has to be lived with virtue and maturity and truth at all times, So that's really what we're trying to accomplish. We are going to be in Tampa, Florida, as I mentioned, very shortly. Go to my website. Go to Kevin Jackson, the Blackosphere, Tim Wilkins, BradStine.com, and you can get tickets to Tampa, Florida to watch 3 comics who are unapologetically American, showing you what conservative comedy can look like, and more importantly, to show conservatives will spend money and get out of the house and do something by defending free speech in the marketplace. This is what the militia of the mind is going to be. You're going to be expected to do things, to rise up, to find the territory around what you live in, that you have some influence, and fight and stand. And that's where I think we're going to go. Everybody finding their own battle in their own community, whether it's on a school board, whether it has to do with a library that has things. And you're going to mobilize a militia of the mind to fight against these things and show what it looks like to stand up for values that got America this far and are sadly slipping away. Remember, PC free is liberty. The greatest compliment you can get today is if somebody says to you, you're not politically correct, which gives you the perfect opportunity to say, thank you, what a compliment. You don't want to be politically correct. That Marxist cancer must die. Speak a truth at all times. Stand for virtue at all times. Stand for right at all times. Stand for the Constitution at all times. Stands for biblical truth and morality at all times. This is what made the West the greatest idea and the greatest accomplishment and inspiration and success for human race than any other belief system in history. The United States is the last bastion of freedom. We're the last place left. Don't count on Australia or New Zealand or Canada or Europe. They are gone. This is it. This is where we draw a line in the sand and say no more. We will speak truth at all times. This is what the militia of the mind is going to be. Stay tuned. I'll give you more marching orders as I begin to do things. You'll see them on social media, and I'll encourage you to do the same. And let's see what happens if we can mobilize and eventually have a subscription base, $3 a month, for me to be able to build this thing into something even grander that literally is fighting back for freedom. Religious freedom first, American freedom second. God bless you. See you next Monday. And remember, guys, just a comedian, an American, but a comedian nonetheless. And so, really, I'm doing what everybody should do if they're wise. Just put in the woke.